Spiderman, Spiderman, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here come the MJ missions again. Spider-Man 2 is the pinnacle of gaming.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
Aside from Insomniac's goal to make everybody uglier each game,
You ready?
Yeah?
You're gonna love this.
I'm not gonna watch! I'm not gonna watch!
How could this happen to me?
it seems like we've gotten a pretty good game on our hands to round the year off. Let's discuss Spider-Man 2. In many ways, this game takes a step forward, but in other aspects of the game, I felt like we took 2 steps back from the original title.
You know, that's some bullshit.
This is the first next generation title that I felt actually lives up to that name, aside from just having pretty graphics. This video will contain spoilers for the entire game, so if you haven't beaten it and are wondering if it's worth a purchase or not, I'd say if you're a Spider-Man fan and enjoyed either of the last 2 games, there is a lot to love and enjoy here. I have my personal gripes with the title, but I don't think they necessarily make the game bad. Before we begin, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my friend Anthony. He gifted me a copy of Spider-Man 2, so if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be making this video so soon. Thanks Anthony for being a homie, and let's get into it. So for the story portion, I don't have it scripted because I tried scripting it, but I didn't like anything I was writing, so I think going off the top of my head and discussing how I felt about the story would be a better way to do it. I'm probably gonna miss some things and forget some stuff, but that's okay, it is what it is. I have a bullet points here about the characters, and that's basically how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna talk about each one. So Kraven as a villain for the first half or 2/3 of the game I think is established pretty well. He doesn't have a lot of scenes where he talks, and a lot of his characterization comes from things he does. For example, like killing Scorpion I thought was a good use to show that this character means business. He's not just somebody that the game tells you is a threat, but he actually acts like one and does things that will make him look imposing. He has a lot of backstory, I'd say, through audio logs, which is okay, but the thing is, if you're rushing through those missions or what his goons say about him, then you won't care. So that kind of hurts his character a little bit. I wish he had more scenes, but he doesn't. It is what it is. Okay, the next character I have here is Harry. I think Harry is established pretty well. They showed him off in the last game very slightly through Peter's side quest with the research stations, and also Mary Jane finds his journal at the end of that game. And they established his character a little bit, which I thought was good. Obviously, you don't actually speak to him or see him, but that's fine. At least we know he's in the universe. Unlike something like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where
It's like seeing a ghost.
Who the fuck is this guy?
where Harry just pulls up, and if you don't know anything about the story or you just watch it, you're supposed to believe that they're best friends without them showing anything. So it's very hard to get involved with that and be like, okay, yeah, this is Peter's best friend. In this game, they show Peter, Harry, and Mary Jane hanging out. They show flashbacks of Peter and Harry. They do a good job of making you care for him, and his eventual reveal of having the symbiote.
Sorry!
Harry!
Pete?
At Coney Island was really cool. I like that scene. I like how when Harry is going to free Tombstone, Harry pulls up unexpectedly and then you fight crime with him. Another nice touch that maybe a lot of people don't know. Harry will actually pull up to fight crime with you if you don't continue the story after he pulls up in his own spider suit. I thought that was really cool. I like that touch. It shows that he was actually helping out, even if he didn't necessarily in your playthrough. It shows that he was there helping them do stuff, even if it was for a little bit. So it just adds to his character. He comes off as a good guy. I thought he was written well enough for what he was there for, and you kind of care about him. The eventual turn of Harry from becoming, healthy with the symbiote to sicker, and then eventually he becomes Venom because he's bitter and he hates Peter, and Peter starts saying shit to him too.
I need that suit back.
Why don't you pop some more pills and say what you really feel?
Hey!
Shut up, bitch!
I'm the hero here, not you.
Are you okay?
Shut up, bitch!
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're.
They do a good job of showing Harry's turn, and they make you feel for him and care about what happens. And then in the ending fight, I thought he was gonna die, so I was kind of sad about it. I was like, damn, that sucks, because you know, you can feel the friendship between them. It doesn't feel like there's a lack of chemistry there to me. So overall, I'd say Harry was done pretty well. I liked him as a character. There are a few awkward points where he's like a third wheel between Peter and Mary Jane, and then he plays it off with a joke, and I was like, okay, dude. But other than that, Mary Jane, I don't have a lot to say about her. Her missions are still ass. I don't like them. I don't think they're that fun. I don't think anybody's really playing the game for her specifically. If they are, I mean, whatever. They're probably gonna have the missions in the third game. It's not something I'm gonna cry about if they're there, but I do think it kills the game's replayability. Doesn't matter for a first playthrough, sure, but whatever. I think she's whatever. She's there. I don't really understand why they shove her into this third lead role, but it seems like they're dead set on trying to get you to care about what all three of them are doing. Mid character. Okay, Miles is an interesting character. I have a lot to say about him, to be honest. I think as a character on his own, he isn't weak, but he's not very likable as a person. He's kind of like a cardboard box is the best way to put it. I don't really feel like I connect with him or like he's funny. He doesn't feel like a New Yorker. I don't know how to explain it. He feels like an NPC that was generated and all his lines are programmed by like ChatGPT. That might not make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but trust me, if you're from the city, bro, you know that he just acts a little funny. It's not that bad, but like realistically, as a protagonist, I think he could be a little more likable. I think this story is great. It does a good job of bringing Miles in as his own character. Peter pushes him aside in this story somewhat, so he's forced to become a little bit more independent, and the story itself serves as his coming of age story. I think the interjection of Miles having a vengeance arc or being extremely mad at Martin Lee is a bit weird and off-putting, not because it doesn't make sense, but because it feels out of nowhere.
Martin Lee. Miles, I'm vengeance.
I don't remember him ever acting like that in the first game. Of course, he was upset that, you know, his father passed, but it's not like he says he wants vengeance and all this stuff. I didn't play his own game, so I don't know if he brings it up there, but it feels like a very last minute interjection to just throw this in there. So Miles has something going on while Peter's doing the symbiote stuff, which I didn't like. I wish it was interjected a bit more naturally, but as a character, I think he's fine. He's a little boring and I don't think he's funny. I wish they did more to flesh out his character, make him funnier. I don't know how to explain it, but like he doesn't feel like somebody that's from the city. That's my biggest complaint with Miles. He feels like some weird cardboard box NPC. That's the best way I can put it, to be honest, off the top of my head. But yeah, as a character, he's okay. He's not that bad. I like playing as him. I think he has fun animations when you're swinging. His story was good in this game. I'd say that's the thing I like the most. I think his story was good. The final boss fight being going from you play as Peters to them playing as Miles is like a cool symbolic pass of the torch. I really like that. One thing I'll bring up is that they totally ripped off fucking Arkham Origins at the end with the Harry and Miles scene, and I was like, alright bro, this is just the Alfred Bruce scene all over again, but whatever, it's fine. It worked for the story. I enjoyed it, so it is what it is. Not a big deal. The last thing I'm going to talk about for the story is the way the symbiote was handled. I liked it a lot. At first, you see Harry. He was this guy who was portrayed to be very sick and like unwell, but you see him and he's full of energy. He even moves faster than Peter on the bike. Things like that. Little subtle things that show you that this guy is full of energy and he's kicking, like he's doing good. So I like that because it shows you how the symbiote has had a positive effect on his life. And then he even becomes a superhero later on in the game and helps Peter out, which I thought was cool. Another cool thing they did was they alluded to the fact that the symbiote tries to leave him, essentially combined with with Peter, which I thought was a nice touch because it shows you that the symbiote is trying to choose Peter essentially, and then eventually when it does choose Peter and then Harry kind of has nothing and he slowly becomes sicker, their friendship starts to fade a little bit.
I like being bad.
And then his turn to becoming Venom I thought was great. I really enjoyed that, especially the fact that segment is playable. Really sick portion. They did a good job with that. I hope there is more Venom gameplay or some other type of playable character they might do in a spin-off game or something in the future. But overall, I'd say that was handled pretty well. I enjoyed it a lot. That's about it for the story. Sorry this is rambly, as I didn't know how I wanted to put it down on paper, but I feel better doing it this way, if that makes sense. So yeah, overall, the story was good. It had some cheesy moments, but I mean, hey, it's basically like a superhero movie story in a video game, so it's good. It's good for what it is. I enjoyed it. The characters could be a little funnier. It's my biggest critique. Miles, Peter, their jokes are okay. The funniest Peter is when he had the symbiote on him, and
No wonder your family left you. God,
If I had to bring up another thing I didn't like, it's that it feels like Peter gets nerfed so Miles can do more, or he just ends up looking goofy in certain scenarios. Like for example, in this game, he saves Harry from an RPG getting shot at them, right? And then they're under rubble. For some reason, Peter can't move, even though in the last game, in the tutorial segment, he's shown to be able to lift the building. And if that's not enough to show his endurance, he also takes a thrashing from the Sinister Six and he's still like getting up in one of those cutscenes, but then they pin him down. So it's not like the character doesn't have tenacity, but it feels like they write him goofy in some portions to be like, oh man, like he's tired or some shit. I don't know, it's just a little off-putting, but other than that, yeah, it's fine. Story was good, I enjoyed it. This is the part where I start saying negative things about the game, so brace yourselves, boys. Spider-Man 2 was a fun experience for the most part. The traversal is still probably my favorite in any game ever, and I don't feel shy or wrong in saying that. Swinging around New York is mostly the same aside from new animations, and it still feels amazing in this entry. The only issue I have with the traversal is that the gliding takes out the engagement that the first game had with getting around. In the sequel, they decided to add the web wings, which is okay, but along with it, there are air currents you can ride and make distance around the city extremely quick. This isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but what I don't like is just how autopilot friendly this is. It's essentially fast travel, but not as fast. When I say this, please keep in mind I like the web wings. I do. I think when you build up momentum and gain a burst of speed, or you decide to slingshot in between two buildings or off of a slingshot post, and then boom, you're flying through the city, that's awesome. But I don't like how for a lot of it, you just put your controller down and do something else. You could argue that you don't have to use the wind tunnels, and yeah, that's true, but I wish there was a setting to turn down the glide assist or something, so I'd have to manually control myself while flying through these rings. They definitely have this set up, as during the follow the robot pigeon side quest, you can't autopilot, you literally have to control your Spider-Man fly through the rings. Aside from this gripe, I thoroughly enjoyed the traversal, but I can't say the same about the combat. You'd think in a game where they give you two Spider-Men with different superpowers and strengths that would get different gameplay, but man, for a game with over 100 suits, it really doesn't matter which character you choose to play as. Not only did they nerf gadgets from the original release, taking you down to 4, but the other abilities just serve as a texture pack of each other. Now, they're not all one-to-one, that'd be a stretch to say, but they're pretty damn close. Both Spider-Men have an AoE launcher, a dash move, some sort of AoE blast, you get the point. Speaking more on the new gadgets, in this title, they don't feel as good as the first entry. Now, I know some people didn't like the fact that you had to go through a weapon wheel to select the gadget and then use it, as this broke up the flow of combat for them. For me personally, I didn't feel this. It gave me time to think about how I wanted to use things, and also, it just wasn't that bad once you learn where each gadget is. You just select it at the press of a button, and then boom, you're back into the flow of things. The new system wouldn't be so bad if they didn't demolish half of the tools Peter had in the original, and could at least select 4 of your choice. But nah, fuck that. Look, we got Peter using the iron spider arms on a suit that doesn't even have slots for it. Woo! I understand this was a gameplay choice, but as far as I know, they don't even bring importance to Peter using these. For example, in Arkham, Bruce isn't just losing tech out of his asshole each entry. Instead, you're gaining new things. There shouldn't have to be a compromise or neutering the player's toolset unless you're gonna give me a reason in the game. I've never been a fan of games nerfing the player constantly, just so you can start from level 1 and have to regain everything you had in a previous title. I'm looking at you, Kingdom Hearts. And before anybody says anything, yeah, I know I have a Mega Man Zero profile picture, but they stopped that trend after the second game, and those games came out in the early 2000s. Aside from this, let's speak about the powers themselves. Now, I don't think the Iron Spider arms or the symbiote powers themselves are horrible in actual use, but man, all the powers, yeah, including Miles's, they just kind of make the combat brain dead. The special moves in the first entry that came with each suit also had this problem. I understand they give you invincibility frames so it doesn't become annoying to use them and they don't feel weak or like you can't throw them out in something like a boss fight, but in general, it just dumbs down the experience so much. The takedowns themselves I didn't have a problem with, or the focus meter itself at all, as all it does is give you an option to heal when you mess up or take out one pesky foe you don't want to fight normally. It by no means trivializes your experiences, as you only get to use it when you have a bar full. Unless you're playing Miles, then you can literally just spam his special move and get all the focus bars back. All the special moves having invincibility frames makes it so it never matters what order you use them in, or if you're combining them with something else. In general, you can just throw everything out like a caveman and the encounter ends. This felt much more like a horde simulator compared to the first game. That one had its issues too, and I'd like to touch up on the older titles in another video, praising and criticizing what I felt could have been better, but for this title, the combat does feel like a huge step down for me personally. Aside from having invincibility frames on all of your specials, you know what else they decided to throw in?
I'll get you out of this!
That's right, Spider-Man has his own Spartan Rage mode now. Woo! I would have said this mode is fine if it wasn't that it's the answer to everything, but it literally is. You can throw this out during boss fights, horde missions, crimes, etc. And then your gameplay is dumbed down even more to just mashing square or the specials until everything around you dies. It wouldn't be so bad if you had to avoid being hit, let's say to keep the mode up longer, but as it is, there are no penalties, rhyme, or reason as to why you wouldn't use this aside from just imposing challenges on yourself because you want the game to be tougher. Following these points, you might be like, well, the boss fights are still kind of tough, right? Yes and no. While I did die a few times on these fights, which I was happy about, and as a spectacle, I enjoyed most of the fights in this game. You're not going to hear me complain about that. But in terms of the actual gameplay, each and every single boss fight can be boiled down to hitting the boss 3 or 4 times with square, throwing out an ability, hitting them another 3 times, next ability, so on and so forth. It's not all bad, but it really drags the game down to not have to respect anything the bosses throw and be like, nope, my turn. This is definitely going to trigger some people, but one thing I like about the Arkham games is that aside from the stupid tank missions in Night, when it came to most of the fights in the quadrilogy, you had to respect the bosses and their fighting styles. You couldn't go in there and just mash everything, especially during the stealthy battles, as Batman is not a walking tank with on-demand heals or a god mode. Aside from the plot armor, he's a human and a squishy one at that. Even all the way up to the final boss fight, the only thing stopping me from continuing to combo Venom was the fact that the web grabber decides to pull in everything around, wasting the sound barrels. The worst part of all is that even though people complained about the Mary Jane levels in the first game, that was not rectified here. Instead, Insomniac doubled the fuck down and was like, you guys don't like the Mary Jane levels? So instead of removing them, let's turn Mary Jane into a bootlegged Leon Kennedy. Man, the residents are not evil in this game.
What the hell? I'm coming! Just hang.
Okay, never mind. Maybe they are a little evil, but still, while they're not as horrible as the first game, and you can kind of just run through most of them, would I prefer to just see Mary Jane doing shit in a cutscene and then continuing to control one of the Spider-Men? Yeah, 100%. It breaks up the gameplay flow, but I wouldn't say that's for the best, as it ends up slowing things down to a tedium. The same can be said about the spider stealth sections in the title, as the stealth is tackled on like a Bethesda stealth system instead of being something engaging that you'd want to partake in. When it comes to stealth, at least in the first title, with gadgets such as the impact web and the trip mine, there was some variety in how you took down the goons. We got stealth takedowns and web rush, which is nice, but both of these are just from the first game anyways. They did add the ability to deploy your own web line, which is cool, and a good addition, but having in the other stuff could have made for some good stealth instead of what we have now. The game has a good amount of variety when it comes to the enemy types and how to deal with them. We even got mini bosses in this entry, which wasn't something we had in the first game. It's commendable, but once you realize you can trivialize anything with the powers, it completely takes the edge off of having to respect your enemies and certain moves coming your way. On one hand, this is nice as you can dispatch of these foes in a bunch of different ways, but at the same time you completely reduce the threat this type of enemy is supposed to have. This game doesn't need to be Arkham, but in that game, aside from the takedowns or gadgets knocking down foes, the weapon they had, whether it was a medic, brute, gunman, etc. Each foe has its own relevance and shakes up the combat by having you decide what is the most immediate threat to take out. In Spider-Man, it doesn't matter who you take out and when, you can just go bananas. I've seen the argument that this means you have true freedom in how you dispatch foes, but this isn't like the swinging where expressing yourself and doing what you want is part of that. It feels a bit pointless to do a bunch of extra shit when holding down left bumper and pressing cross, circle, triangle, square. In that order is enough to get through any encounter. I've been kind of ranting a lot, but please understand I'm a fan just like you. I know not everybody's going to share my complaints about this stuff, but it's just how I personally felt. Originally, I thought it wasn't that long of a list, but looking at it now, I just think they really had a good building block from the first title and decided to not push and improve on those ideas. Instead, doing a 180 and changing the gameplay to be more mind-numbing. Aside from the gameplay and story, what about the side quests and collectibles? Well, aside from the Howard side quest, the Flame quest line, and the one quest where you help the lady get the robot dog, I can't say I was too engaged with any of the other activities. They're not bad, they're just decent. And at the end of the day, it's just more Spider-Man, so who doesn't love that? But I think for a game that is trying to push the open world and side content as well as a banger story, then this should have been a bit more fleshed out than it is. The base missions are a bit improved from Spider-Man PS4, as for those it was always the same thing. Walk in a room, fight 5 waves of enemies, and then wrap them up, rinse and repeat. It got old a bit quick. In Spider-Man 2 it's definitely faster, and you can mop up the floor with your godlike abilities pretty fast, so that's a plus and a minus depending on who you ask. What about the collectibles? They're again decent. I didn't really enjoy going for any of these, but I enjoyed swinging around the city, so having another reason to do that is okay in my book. My big issue with side quests comes from the Mysterio questline and the Flame questline though. The main issue I had with the Flame questline is that when it was over, I was like, that's it? It was building up cool, and by the final mission I was interested, but it ends like a wet fart, probably because it's going to be DLC bait or for the potential Venom spin-off game. The Mysterio challenges are just watered down Taskmaster challenges, which are just watered down challenge maps from the Arkham series. If you want to put challenge maps in the game, just do it. Put it in there whether it's DLC or there at launch. I'm sure many people would be down for that. I know I would, as I thoroughly enjoy more reasons to play the game, and chasing high scores in modes like that can be fun. It would also give them somewhere to potentially throw in more playable characters such as Black Cat or Martin Lee who help you throughout the story. This would be a dope touch. You could even do web swinging races, whether that's in a co-op mode against a friend or against time trials set by other players and a computer. This would be dope to see. There's a lot of untapped potential here, and I think Insomniac should act on it as it gives your players more to do, and aside from adding special maps, they could reuse locations from the base game if they don't want to make specific locales for that stuff. The Mysterio challenges as they are though, are just beat 'em up challenges, which is fine. I don't mind just fighting goons, but at least mix it up. I complained about the stealth, but where are the stealth challenges from the first game? This was either taken out due to time constraints, or more so because players don't like this. If that's the case, great, that's fine, but what about those that do? Or the Mary Jane levels themselves, as those were complained about, but you seem dead set on improving and keeping them in the game. So why can't you show the same effort to the stealth in this title? Hell, you could even throw in a Venom mode as one of the challenges, but that isn't here either. Overall, the side content in this title is extremely half-baked, and I didn't feel like they really thought about it much from a design aspect. I hope this is something that's fixed and they can take their time on in the third game, as this was really disappointing. Now, I don't want to leave this video off on a bad note, so let's talk about the good. This game is the first exclusive I felt fits the bill for what next gen was supposed to be. There are absolutely no loading screens in this game. You can fast travel from Brooklyn to Harlem to Times Square to Astoria in a matter of seconds, and you don't have to be interrupted by a loading screen, getting immediately thrust into the action. The suits, while I don't love every single design and miss some of the suits from the previous entry, such as the Future Foundation suit, I really love that they added suit styles, so even if you don't like the way something looks by default, you may enjoy one of the recolors. They went above and beyond and added in all the mainline movie suits, which I'm sure was hell to get the licensing for, so thank you Insomniac for putting the effort in. Although, what do you expect when people were rioting in the streets over not having their Raimi suit fixed in the last game? I don't know too much about all the spider lore, but the end suit for Miles has to be one of my favorite suits in a superhero game. He looks baller in it, but then he says things like,
"Now we outside. I'm very good at this. I know a great guidance counselor if you need career advice. Turn me up some."
Whatever that means. The animations look great for the swinging, combat, gliding, even the faces. While being a downgrade appearance-wise, the actual animations look good most of the time, so that's nice. Overall, Spider-Man 2 was a relatively good sequel. I have my personal gripes with this release, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. A great title in many ways, but a step down from what it's already accomplished in the first entry. Just my thoughts though. What did you like about Spider-Man 2? Did you dislike anything? If you made it this far, subscribe. I've got more games I'd like to talk about in the future. And I'd like to thank you so much for watching and giving me your time. We just hit 400 subscribers this past week, and it's surreal to see that. I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a good day and take care of yourselves.